All right, I will say good morning, Alichtige Chamika. A great schus Baruch Hashem to continue in our journey in Sanhedrin together, beginning by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning share, to thank our annual Talmud Torah sponsor for Tafshin Pei 5785, the Tilsim Mishpacha of Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all of the Shiurim and Drashos this year in the schus of finishing Maseches Bava Basra, and in Eretz Hashem beginning the exciting adventure of Maseches Sanhedrin. We should be zochim in Eretz Hashem to finish this Masechta and many Masechtos together in the years to come. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Kislev, Josh and Becker Friedman, in commemoration of the art site of Josh's father, Yisrael Yehuda Ben Rav Chaim Rafael Zichron Livracha, for the schus of the safe return of our hostages and the security of all of our precious soldiers. Sammy and Malka Esterson, in memory of their parents, Yitzchak Leib ben Aaron HaKohen, Sarah Rachel Bas Baruch Avram, and Hinda Bas Henech Ephraim, Zichron Livracha, whose yard site is today, and in memory of their dear friend, brave soldier, beloved husband and father, Naftali Gordon, Naftali Yonah, Shemikom Damo, Ben, Beatrice Miriam, and Danielle Yigal. Our Day of Learning sponsors, Alan and Sherry Steinmetz, in honor of the bar mitzvah of their grandson, Judah Steinmetz. And Mazel Tov to Adam and Allison Steinmetz, the whole mishpacha. Mazel Tov to proud grandparents, Chuck and Patty Levy, in commemoration of the yard site of Sherry's father, Moshe Nassan ben Menachem Manis. Zichronim Bracha. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Neshama Slav and Aliyah, the families of Nechama, all of those who need a refuah, Shavon, together with Kol Cholei Yisrael, and as the bar mitzvah bacher should grow to become an incredible ben Torah, gadol bat Torah, gadol b'naisim tovim, ben adon l'chaveiro, ben adon l'makom. Our precious hostages should Eretz Hashem be returned to their families b'shalom and b'karov, and our holy soldiers should be successful b'chol maaseh yedeim. But with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today. A really exciting and incredible daf ahead of us. Today's daf is daf Yud. We are picking up on Tes Amud Beis 9b, and we are picking up Amar Rav Yosef, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, about 10 lines up from the bottom. So Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef said as follows: Hevi habal edim shezinsa, the hevi ha'av edim, the zimum le'edei habal. So what happened? Reuven is married to Rachel. Reuven brings witnesses that said that Rachel committed adultery. Now, obviously, the impact of committing adultery is twofold. Number one, potentially there's a capital case, there's a death penalty, and also, of course, there is the loss of the ksuva. So two pieces. So now, Reuven brought witnesses that Rachel committed adultery. Vehevi ha'av edim, and then Rachel's father brought witnesses, ve'zimum le'edei habal, and made the witnesses of Reuven into edim zommin. So essentially, again, remember, we know this process. So the father's witnesses show up and say to Reuven's witnesses, there's no way you could have seen Rachel commit adultery on Tuesday, because on Tuesday, imanu hayisim, you were with us. You're with us. So remember again, the way Hazama works is the father's witnesses are not claiming that Reuven's witnesses are, I should say differently, the father's witnesses are not claiming that Rachel didn't commit adultery. They have no idea if Rachel committed adultery or not. But what do they know? They know that Reuven's witnesses, right, the husband's witnesses, did not see what they said they saw, for the simple reason that the Reuven's witnesses were somewhere else at the time of the alleged event. So we'll say, so now remember again, what happens with Hazama? In general, when Eidim are made into Eidim Zomamin, there's a reciprocal punishment. V'asisim lo kasha Zamam. What do we do to Eidim Zomamin? Whatever punishment they sought to impose upon the defendant, that's the punishment they get. So what's the halacha in this case? The halacha is Eidei habal neragin. So we'll say, so in this case, the witnesses of Reuven's witnesses, they are put to death. Because remember again, they tried to put Rachel to death, and therefore halacha l'maisa, they're put to death as well. However, ve'ein mishalmin mammon. They do not have to pay money. Now again, remember, as we mentioned before, the ramifications of their testimony was twofold. Number one, putting Rachel to death. Number two, depriving her of her ksuva. But the halacha is, they get the death penalty, they don't have to pay. Why? We know this principle. Kimle b'dirabimine. Whenever you go ahead and you do one act which generates dual responsibility, one of them capital, one of them financial, so the capital punishment trumps any financial obligation that they have. So therefore, again, they're put to death. That's the reciprocal punishment, but They do not have to pay ksuva. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Chazer, now listen to this, okay, an interesting twist over here. Chazer vehevi abal edim ve'zimum le'edi ha'av. So what happens now is interesting. And again, we'll see this in Maseches Makkos, exactly how these cases would work. But again, for now, we'll deal with the basic understanding. So let's say in this case over here, right, Reuven brings witnesses that his wife Rachel committed adultery. Father of Rachel brings witnesses and makes Reuven's witnesses into Edim Zomim, and then Reuven brings another set of witnesses that makes his father-in-law's witnesses into Edim Zomim. The Hanukkah party is going to be very awkward. That's bottom line in all of this, right? So what happens now? So now Reuven brings a second set of witnesses to make his father-in-law's witnesses into Edim Zomim. So what's the halacha? So I'll say, so in this case now, so the witnesses of the father, right, the father's witnesses are going to be put to death, because remember again, through their testimony, they were going to put Reuven's witnesses to death. So therefore, the reciprocal punishment for those witnesses is the death penalty. Watch this. And they also have to pay money. Now take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Look at Rashi. Umishalmin mamon mea kesef labal shabau lachayva kishezimu es edav. So remember again, what money is there? So they're not paying ksuva. What they're paying is essentially motzi shemra, the defamation amount. Because remember again, when the father's witnesses come along and say that Reuven's witnesses were lying, so essentially the witnesses are going to be put to death because they're lying falsely regarding a capital case. Therefore, reciprocal punishment demands that they be executed. But also remember, it turns out then that Reuven was defaming his wife, Motzi Shemra. What's the halacha for Motzi Shemra? There is a 100 shekel, there's a 100 silver coin penalty that is associated with that. Well now, when it turns out that the witnesses of the father are in fact lying, they've been made Edim Zomin. So first of all, they'll be put to death because halacha l'maisa, they tried to put the witnesses of Reuven to death. That's number one. And number two, through their testimony, they would have required Reuven to pay the defamation fee. So they're also chayiv mammon. What about kimle b'derabamine? What about the fact that when you incur two liabilities, financial and capital, the capital liability sets aside the financial one? This is different. Why, says Rashi? Why says the Gemara? The Gemara says, Mamon lezeh unefashos lezeh. So this is fascinating. When does the concept of kimle b'derabamine apply? When it's dual liability to the same person. But when it's two different liabilities, you would be chayiv twice. So for example, in the previous case, so both the financial and the capital liability were both directed towards Rachel. Right, both are towards Rachel. So therefore, again, once Reuven's witnesses are shown to be liars, so then halacha might say they're executed, but no financial liability. In this case over here, if you notice, when the witnesses of the father are proven to be Edim Zomin, there's dual liability, but in two different directions. They're chayiv misa to the witnesses of Reuven because they tried to put them to death. That's the liability there. And they also would have required Reuven to have to pay money. Two different people, two different buckets of liability. Kimle b'derabamine does not go ahead and apply. So I'll say, by the way, we've seen this before, just in a different application, right? So for example, let's say Reuven goes over to Shimon's field on Shabbos, and he goes ahead and he, So let's say for example, he goes ahead and he goes into Reuven's house. Reuven goes into Shimon's house, and Shimon's wallet is sitting right on the doorstep of his home. And so what Reuven does is he steals Shimon's wallet and he pulls it outside into the Rosh Hashanah. So in that case, what's the halacha? Reuven is going to be chayiv for chilul Shabbos, for Shabbos violation, transferring an item from one domain to another, but not chayiv for the theft. Why? Because there's simultaneity. Both the liability, the simultaneity for liability. Both liabilities, or the liability occurred simultaneously. Contrast that with the following case. Reuven goes into Shimon's field, right, and plucks a carrot out of the ground to steal it. Then what's the halacha? Reuven is chayiv for both things, right? He's going to be chayiv for theft if he ends up taking it out, and to also be chayiv for the act of violation of Shabbos. Why? Because the two acts did not occur simultaneously. When he plucks it out of the ground, there's Shabbos liability. But theft liability actually doesn't occur until when? Until he leaves Ruvain's property. So we see this concept, Kimlein b'drabimine only applies when there's simultaneity. When the two events are disjointed, you could be chayiv twice. So this is just, so we've usually seen simultaneity in the act. Here what the Gemara is introducing is it's simultaneity in liability. If you're liable to the same person, then halacha ma'aseh kilim b'drabimine. You chayiv to two different people, do a liability. Incredible, incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. Rabbi Yossi says as follows: Ploni Ravo Lionso, Hu ve'echad mitzaref nargo. Okay, this is an interesting case, right? So Reuven claims, Shimon violated me, right? Shimon sodomized me. So what's the halacha? Now, if Reuven claims that it was against his will, then Reuven can combine with another witness to put Shimon to death. Right? That's the halacha. So again, we're going to see, interestingly enough, even though Reuven is participant in this, right? Reuven's the victim over here, but halacha l'maisa, Reuven can combine with another witness to put Shimon to death. On the other hand, l'rtzono, if Reuven says it was a consensual relationship, then then ultimately again Reuven is in violation of biblical law. V'Torah amra al tashes rasha aid, and the Torah says, okay, so again, Reuven essentially has self-incriminated. So once Reuven has self-incriminated, he cannot then he lost his credibility, and he cannot go ahead and be a witness against Shimon. Rava says not true. Adam karov eitzel atzmo ve'in adam mesim atzmo rasha. So we'll say this is incredible. Rava comes along and says no. Actually, when Reuven says that he willingly participated in this forbidden act, he does not go ahead and invalidate himself as a witness. Why not? Because a person is not believed. So this Rava is saying two things. Number one, Adam karov eitzel atzmo. A person is like a relative to himself. So just like relatives are not believed to give testimony regarding each other, so too a person is not believed to give testimony regarding himself, specifically self-incriminating testimony regarding himself. Take a look at the last Rashi. Rava says, Ein adam nifsal le'edos ba'odas piv. A person cannot be made invalid as a result of his own testimony. The Adam Karav Eitza Atzmo, because a person is related to himself. Hilchach Ein Adam Yachal Lasum Atzmo Rasha, Kilomar Al Eidos Atzmo Eno Naase Rasha, Shari Torah Pasla Karav Laedis. So we'll say this is incredible. Remember, the Torah invalidates relatives from giving testimony. Relatives cannot be believed as testimony. So again, if a relative can't believe, let's say, this is an interesting idea. Who is your closest relative? Who is your closest relative? You. You are your closest relative. Therefore, again, a person is not believed to give testimony regarding themselves. Therefore, by extension, a person is not believed to go ahead and say anything that is self-incriminating. And if you say something that is self-incriminating, halacha doesn't recognize the statement. So when Reuven says that he participated in an illegal relationship with Shimon, we don't listen to him. In other words, that part of the statement is thrown out. It's not. Now again, what we will see is interesting is we may listen to the other part of the statement. What's the other part of the statement? That Shimon did something illegal. That we may listen to. But Lamaisa, again, Reuven's own statement, Lagabe himself, is not believed. So again, it's a twofold. Number one, Adam Karov Liatzmo. A person is close to himself. A person is a relative of himself. Relatives can't give testimony. And therefore, by extension, ein adam mesimis atzmo rasha. A person cannot self-incriminate. I will say, I'll tell you something really just amazing about this. This notion of adam karov eitzel atzmo is that sometimes, what does it mean a person is close to himself? And I will say, one of the greatest challenges in life is the ability to see one's faults, the ability to see my own deficiencies, and the ability to see what's broken inside of me. And it makes perfect sense. I mean, sometimes it's so fascinating how we are so adept and so in tune in seeing everyone else's faults and everyone else's shortcomings. Like I can pick it out so easily, right? I can list it from worst to least, right? Greatest to least, chronologically, alphabetically, right? Whatever you want. Like, and I can catalog it, right? I can tell everything. I can't remember my kids' birthdays, but I absolutely remember what is wrong with every single other person in my life, right? But yet, when it comes to ourselves, we're so blind to some of the things that are just glaringly broken. And the interesting part is, it's not a flaw per se. It's just the way we're programmed. Adam karov eitzel atzmo. I am my best friend. I am my closest relative. And because of that, I'm just blind to so many of the things that are broken that may be obvious. And that's why, again, so you see Chazal highlight the idea of having a chaver tov, having a rebbe. It doesn't have to be a rebbe, like someone in your life who you trust enough and you believe loves you enough to be able to tell you, like, you're a jerk, not in that exact lashon, right? But you understand, like, that's really not right. You really shouldn't do that. That is a destructive trait. That is not a healthy behavior. You're better than that, obviously, with love and with confidence. And I will say, but some people go through life and they live life in an echo chamber, and they purposely do not associate with people who are going to tell them like it is, because they just want to keep going the way they're going. And you end up missing out on a life of self-actualization, because I'm so close to myself that I just refuse to see anything that's broken. It's incredible. So the Gemara goes like to Amar Rava. I'll say there's a tremendous Chanukah tie-in, which we don't have time for. So if by some miracle I finish the daf, just remind me about tie-in to Adam Karav Eitzel Atzmo. Amar Rava says as follows. Top of Yud. Ploni Ba'al Ishti. So we'll say, what's the halacha? Ruvain comes along, and Ruvain testifies. It's interesting. Ruvain testifies, right? Ruvain testifies. Ploni Ba'al Ishti, right? So Ruvain testifies that Shimon had relations with his wife, with Ruvain's wife. So Ruvain's married to Rachel. So Ruvain comes to Beis Din. Shimon committed adultery with my wife. So what's the halacha? Hu ve'echad mitztarfen laharga, aval lo laharga. So Ruvain and another witness can combine together to execute Shimon, but not to execute Rachel, right? So Ruvain, the husband, is believed to execute Shimon, but not to execute Rachel. So Gemara says, "My kamash malon." So we'll say, so by the way, it makes sense. Why isn't Ruvain believed to execute Rachel? Why not? Because he's a karav, he's a relative, right? It's his wife. So of course his testimony is going to be inadmissible for any relative. So the Gemara says, okay, my kamash malon. So we'll say, so ultimately again, what is halacha l'maisa? What is the chiddush? The mefalgina b'dibura, that we splice Ruvain's testimony, that we'll believe Ruvain's testimony legabe Shimon, but not legabe Rachel. So Gemara says hainuhak. We said that. Again, we'll say that was in the case. We just saw that before, right? That if Ruvain testifies that Shimon violated him, right? And Ruvain says that what? Ruvain says that halacha l'maisa, it was against my will. So what's the halacha? Ruvain is permitted to go ahead and combine with another witness to execute Shimon. So we see, even though Ruvain is not believed regarding himself, right? But yet again, he's believed regarding Shimon. So we see this idea that you can splice testimony, palgina dibure. Same case. So Ma'adatim, Rabbi says, incredible. What would you have thought? Adam karav eitzel atzma amrinan, eitzel ishto lo amrinan. This is wild. So the Gemara says, you might have thought that when do we say a person is a relative to, when is a person is karov to himself? Maybe he's not considered to be a karov to his wife. Wow. Right? Maybe he's not considered to be a karov to his wife. And therefore maybe halacha l'maisa, Ruvain should be believed not only legabe Shimon, but even legabe Rachel. Kamash malon, no. Kamash malon, that a man is considered to be a karov to his wife as well, and therefore Ruvain's testimony is inadmissible legabe Rachel, but it is admissible for Shimon. I will say it's fascinating. That's a havamina, right? That a person is not a karov to his wife. So again, what you see in Chazal, by the way, is that there are different types of marriages. Different types of marriages, and in some marriages there's a kirva, there is a closeness, and in some there aren't. Especially, remember again, appreciate the fact that marriage in the times of the Gemara was also a different kind of construct. We see this all of the time, that marriage wasn't necessarily motivated out of a sense of love, but rather again it was there or allowed for a sense of stability, financial stability, familial stability, creation of a family. So you could have a havamina like that. That maybe a man is not considered to be a karov to his wife. Kamash Shalom, the Gemara says yes, there is. There has to be kirva. There has to be closeness in a marriage in order for it to be successful. Amarava, ploni ba'al nara murasa. Interesting case, right? So what happens? Witnesses come along and they say, right, Shimon went ahead and had relations with the Nara HaMu'urasa. Now, Nara HaMu'urasa is a girl who is betrothed, Erisin, to someone else. So she's married. She's a married woman, and therefore relations with her is an act of adultery. Now, what happens? V'huzmu. Now, witnesses came along. We call them Reuven and Shimon came along, and they testified that that Levi had relations with the Nara HaMu'urasa. It turns out then that Reuven and Shimon are lying. Edim Zomin. What's the halacha? Neheragin ve'ein mishalmin mammon. They are executed because remember again, through their testimony, they were going to have Levi executed. So therefore, Allah Chalamaysa, they're executed ve'ein mishalmin mammon, but they don't have to go ahead and pay. They don't have to go ahead and pay money. Now, we'll say, now, why not? Interestingly enough, in this case, if you notice, what's missing over here is they did not name a particular woman. They just made a statement that we know that Shimon committed adultery with a Nara HaMu'urasa, but did not name the woman by name. They didn't name her. Therefore, again, technically speaking, they weren't going ahead and depriving anyone specific of money, of her ksuva. Therefore, they have no financial liability. On the other hand, if halacha l'maisa, Reuven and Shimon show up and they say Levi was going ahead and he had relations with Rachel, right, the daughter of so-and-so, so they named the girl, then halacha l'maisa, they'll be chayiv, death penalty and money. Because again, Abba say, remember, there's no kilim b'drabmine. Why? Because remember, again, there's no simultaneity of liability. They're chayiv to two different people. But Amar Rabba said as follows, Ploni Rava Hashar, so listen to this. So Reuven and Shimon show up and they say, Levi had relations with an ox. Okay? V'hozmu. And it turns out that they're lying. So what's the halacha? Neheragin ve'ein mishalmin mammon. So we'll say, so in this case over here, so remember the witnesses are put to death. Why are they put to death? Because remember again, accusing someone of an act of bestiality comes with a death penalty. So they tried to put Levi to death. It turns out that they're lying. Therefore, again, reciprocal punishment. They're put to death. Now, remember again, as a result of their testimony, there's actually, if you think about it, dual liability. What's the dual liability here? Because remember again, the ox would have also been killed, which means that they would have deprived the owner of the ox of his property as well. But remember again, in this case, like in the previous 2 cases ago, they're not naming a specific ox. Right? All they're saying is that Levi had relations with an ox, but they're not claiming whose ox it was. Therefore, again, when they turn out to be Eidim Zomamin, they're put to death. But halacha l'maisa, again, there's no financial liability because there wasn't someone specific that they were testifying, or a specific ox that they were testifying about. So the Gemara says, good. On the other hand, Sharo Shaploni v'hozmu ne'raginu mishalmin mammon. Mammon lazeh or nefashos lazeh. But if they came along and they said Levi had relations with an ox, and by the way, it was Zvulun's ox, then Einachinami, again, they're chayiv for capital, right? I should say they're going to be put to death because they tried to put Levi to death, and they're also going to be chayiv for Mammon because they tried to deprive Zvulun of his ox. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Hasulamali. Why do you need all these cases? They're very repetitive. Hanuach, Mishum de Kaboy Baya Iluya, de Bay Rava, because Rava had a question. Ploni Rava Shori Mahu. Suppose this is interesting. We had to repeat this for the following case. What happens if Reuven shows up in Beis Din and Reuven says, Shimon violated my ox. Shimon violated my ox. Mi aminan adam karav eitzel atzmo, ve'ein adam karav eitzel mamono, o dilma aminan adam karav eitzel mamono. So we'll say, this is incredible. Do we say that the same way that a person is considered to be a relative to himself, maybe he's considered to be a relative to his money as well? Thank you. Maybe he's going to be a relative to his money as well. And therefore, again, maybe he's disqualified. So maybe Reuven can't go ahead and testify regarding his ox, right? Why? Because since it's his possession, it's his money, a person is a karov to his money, and therefore Allah Chalamaysa, he is disqualified from testifying regarding his money. To which the Gemara says, Basar Debaya Hadar Pashta, after we asked it, right? Asked and answered, Adam Karov Eitzel Atzmo, Ve'in Adam Karov Eitzel Mamono. No, halacha l'maisa, a person is a karov to himself, but a person is not a karov to his money. So we'll say, this is a very profound Gemara. So what we come out from this Gemara is really 3 things. Number 1, a person is considered to be karov, close to himself, which is why often we cannot see our own faults or inconsistencies. A person is karov to his wife, which is a good thing. Right? Now let's say, interestingly enough, a person should not be a karov to his money, should not be a karov to his possessions. Enjoy the possessions, like the possessions, enjoy the money, like the money. But I will say, a person should never feel a sense of kirva, of closeness to their physical possessions. The moment that I feel the same level of kirva to my money, to my material possessions, that I feel to my wife, that I feel to my other relatives, and that I feel to myself, something is wrong in that picture. So Chazal are giving us a tremendous map for life. Feel close to yourself. In other words, and we'll say there's a power in feeling close to yourself. Be happy with yourself. Right? Be happy with your accomplishments. Be happy with the person you are. And if you're not happy, work harder on seeing yourself. But again, recognize, because you're so close to yourself, you're not going to see a lot of things that are broken. Make sure you have someone else in your life who can help you see what needs to be repaired inside of you. In your marriage, strive for kirva. Strive for closeness. Do not content yourself with mediocrity in marriage, but strive for that passion. Strive for that closeness. Strive for that connection. When it comes to your money, it comes to your possessions, enjoy it, right? Certainly try to acquire more of it, be successful, but never allow it to reach a level where you feel a sense of closeness and kirva to stuff. Because the moment that that happens is the moment that that really undermines my quest for ruchnius and totally messes up the hierarchy of things for which I should truly feel kirva. Incredible. Let's go weiter. Makas b'shlosha. So the Mishnah said, for Malkus, right, for administering of lashes, you need a beis din of 3. So the Gemara says, Minhani mili, where do I know this from? Amar Rav Huna, Amar Kra, v'shaftum shnayim. So we'll say, so the pasuk says, ushfatum, right? Literally, kiyer riv ben anashim v'nikshu ela mishpat ushfatum. So the Gemara says, what ushfatum? They will judge. It's plural. What's the minimal plural? Shnayim. 2, ve'in beis din shakol, you can't have an even numbered beis din. Therefore, mosifan alein orecha. Therefore, halacha l'maisa, we add on another 8. Harikan shlosha. So we'll say, fine, that's 3. So interestingly enough, so by the way, pretty simple and straightforward, right? So the pasuk just says, the budget of Kiyer Riv Ben Anashim, Benikshu Ala Mishpat, Ushfatum, Vitstigu Asad Sadik, Virshu Asarasha. Now, the next pasuk talks about Malkus, talks about lashes. So the Torah used the lashon of Ushfatum, you shall judge in the context of lashes. So Shfatum, they will judge, minimum of they, 2, can't have a 2-member beis din, gotta add on at least 1, 3 people for beis din. Beautiful. Elomiato. But if you're dashing like this, then there are other plural words in that pasuk. For example, Vitstiku, they will exonerate him. So that should add on another 2 judges. Virshiu, or they will implicate him, they will find him guilty. That should be another 2 judges. So therefore, I will say, it turns out that what? It turns out that ushvatum, v'hitstikum, v'hirshium is what? 6. Now, you can't have an even number beis din, so therefore, what should that give me? So the Gemara says, Harikan Shiva. That should give me 7. A 7-member beis din. The Gemara says, no. The Hitztiku Virshu is needed for something else. Hahu mibayle l'chidu'ula. So both say that's needed for something else. The Amr Ula, Remez la'idim zomin, atar minayin. From where do you find the scriptural allusion to idim zomin? So the Gemara says, Remez la'idim zomin, ba'ksiv kasher zamam. What are you talking about Remez? You don't need a scriptural allusion. Both say it's a pasuk. It's a pasuk. Again, this is going to be as exciting because this is coming attractions from Seches Makos. But you don't need a scriptural allusion. It's a mafurish pasuk about idim zomin. Ella remez la'idim zomin shalokin minayin. Rather, I will say, from where do we see a remez to idim zomin that they get malchus? You will say. So remember again, what does this mean? In a situation where the whole chap of idim zomin is reciprocal punishment. Witnesses show up, right? They testify about a certain event. Then a second set of witnesses show up, and they say, second set of witnesses say, there's no way you first set could have seen the event that you're testifying about. Why? Why not? You were with us. 2 words. Imanu hayisim. You were with us, and therefore, remember again, Eidim Zomin really has nothing to do about the event. In other words, maybe the event occurred, maybe it didn't occur. We have no idea. Here's what we do know is the first set of witnesses testifying that they saw the event are lying. You did not see what you're claiming to see. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't happen, but you didn't see it because you were with us. And the Torah introduces the novel idea of reciprocal punishment. Whatever the first set of witnesses wanted to visit upon the defendant, that is what is visited upon them. Now, we'll say, what happens in a case where you can't do reciprocal punishment? So what's the classic example of this? The classic example of this is witnesses show up and they say, Ruvain is not a Kohen, right? We've always known Reuven to be a Kohen, right? We just gave him Rishon, right, the other morning. So we know Reuven to be a Kohen. Witnesses show up and they say Reuven is not a Kohen. Why? His mother's a Grusha. His mother's a divorcee. His father married a Grusha, and therefore he's a Chalal. Let's say it turns out that they're lying. So the Gemara says you can't make them. What are you going to do? You're going to make the witnesses a Ben Grusha, Ben Chalal, right? You're going to make them a Chalal? Well, what if they're Yisraelim? It doesn't work. So any time that you can't go ahead and visit reciprocal punishment upon the Eidim Zomin, what do? You give them Malchus. You flog them. You flog them, right? You give them lashes. So the Gemara says, Ella remez la'idim zomin shalokin. I'm sorry. Ella remez la'idim zomin shalokin minayin. Rather, we'll say, so how do I know that in a case where I can't visit reciprocal punishment upon the Eidim, that we give them lashes? We give them lashes. Where do I know that? From Dechsiv, v'tztiko es hatzadik v'yeshua es harasha. So we'll say this pasuk is very interesting. The pasuk says, "You shall exonerate the innocent and implicate the wicked." So the Gemara says, "I understand." The pasuk reads strange. It sounds almost like a cause and effect. So because you exonerate the innocent, you'll implicate the wicked. V'hayam ben hakos harasha. Ella, watch this. Ella. Here's how to read the pasuk. If you have witnesses who went ahead and implicated the wrong person, right? Witnesses come along and they want to make someone into a rasha. They're testifying that someone did something wrong. And then a second set of witnesses come along and exonerate the defendant by showing that the first set of witnesses are lying. And they make the first set of witnesses into Rishaim, i.e. Eidim Zomin, V'haya and bin Hakos Harasha. It will be that if you can't visit reciprocal punishment upon the first set of witnesses, then what? Give them lashes. So therefore, I will say again, so just to point out over here, so therefore, the Gemara wants us to just remember, let's just trace the progression over here. What are we trying to figure out? The Mishnah said that for a Beis Din that administer lashes, how many Eidim do you need? 3. Where do we get that from? Because the pasuk used lashon of ushvatum. You shall judge them, plural. Minimum of plural is 2. Can't have a Beis Din that's equal. So what do? Add on a third. Goes, whoa, 1 second. There are other plural words in that pasuk, right? V'tztiku. You shall, right? V'hirshiu. So if that's the case, it should be 2 for ushvatum, 2 v'tztiku, 2 v'hirsham. What does that give me? That gives me a total of 6, right? Add on one more. That's 7. To which the Gemara says, no. V'tztikum v'hirsham is needed for something else. What is that needed for? That's part of the drasha that teaches me that in the event that you can't give reciprocal punishment to the Eidim Zomim, what do? You flog them. The Gemara says, wait 1 second. V'seifukle milosana. We'll say 1 second. There should be a different reason why you give malchus to Eidim Zomim. What's the reason? I will say they're in violation of a lav, right? Which lav? One of the big 10. Lo sana bre'acha eit shaker. Do not go ahead and be a false witness. That's a lav. That's a prohibition. And in general, we assume you get malchus for violation of a lav. So forget about Eidim Zomin. In other words, you don't have to learn out lash liability from this pasuk. Learn it out from the Asar Dibros. To which the Gemara says, this is very interesting. No, the havile lav shein b'maisa, the cholav shein b'maisa in lokin alav. Incredible. I will say, bearing false witness, interestingly enough, is a lav that does not have an action. Remember again, how do you become a false witness? It's dibur, it's speech. Speech in halacha is not a maisa. You only get malchus, you only get lashes for violating a prohibited action. But if all you're doing is delivering or doing something verbally, technically speaking, that does not meet the threshold, the lash threshold, the lash liability threshold. So I'll say, which is quite interesting. So therefore, halacha l'maisa, the only way to visit malchus upon Eidim Zomamin, if you can't do reciprocal punishment, is through this drasha of v'tztiku v'hirshiu. Through the lav of not bearing false witness. Yes, that's a lav, but because it's a lav she'in b'maisa, therefore no malchus. Incredible. All right, let's go back there. Says the Gemara. Next. So remember again, Rabbi Shmuel says, no, for malchus, you need a Beis Din of 23. Not 3, but a Beis Din of 23. Okay, so the Gemara says, let's analyze this. What's Rabbi Shmuel's logic? We'll say, again, so the Chachamim say, the right Tanakama says, for malchus, a Beis Din of 3. Rabbi Shmuel says a Beis Din of 23. Rabbi Shmuel, what's your logic? Rabbi Shmuel, Abaye says, Asya, Rasha, Mechayve Misos. We learn how to exert Shavav, Rasha, from Chayve Misos. How so? Ksiv hacha v'haya im binakos harasha uksiv hasam asher hu rasha lamos. So I will say, interestingly enough, it says the word rasha in the context of capital cases, and it says rasha in the context ultimately of malchus. What do I learn from this? Ma lahalon be'esrim ushlosha, afkan be'esrim ushlosha. So we'll say, what do I learn? I learned just like halacha l'maisa by capital cases, it's 23. You need a basin of 23. So too, by malchus, I need a basin of 23. Okay, gzer shavav rasha rasha. Rava Amarava says, malchus b'makom misomes. Rava says there's a different reason. This is actually quite fascinating. Malchus is a replacement for death penalty. But what does this mean? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi is about 6 lines up from the bottom. Malchus b'makom misomes. The chayvan de avra alas haras boro. We'll say this is so profound. Remember, when do you get malchus? When do you get malchus? You get malchus generally if you violate a law, a prohibition. Now, the exception to that would just be an Eidim Zomamin, who will get malchus if you can't visit the reciprocal punishment of the But in general, personally, I don't know, name your law. You wear shatnez. I eat something not kosher. Whatever it is, whatever lav. I plant kilayim. I don't know, that was a little random, but right, I plant kilayim. Right, whatever it is, a lav. Any prohibition, you get malchus, you get lashes for that. So Rava says something amazing. He says the chayvan de avra, reading Rashi, the chayvan de avra las haras boro roy hulamos. Wow. We'll say if I violate the word of God, really I should be put to death. Right? In other words, I violate the word of God. Akash Baruch Hu said, don't do something, and I did it. What should be the penalty for that? Misa. Right? In other words, the king said to do something, I didn't do it, or I violated not to do something, and I did it. Really, there should be misa. And what's that? Umisa zu kanas alav akasov v'hari ka'achas mina misos. So Rabbi says something amazing. In reality, malchus is just a replacement for misa. Right? Malchus relates to Misa. Really, a person should be put to death for every violation. Because by the way, it's such a heavy thing to think about. Right? Every time I commit an Avera, I'm violating the word of the king. What if someone were to ask you, what should be the punishment for violating the word of the master of the universe? Misa. That's what happens. Chakash Baruch Hu in his Rachmanos doesn't do that to us. But Malchus, Rava says, comes in lieu of Misa. So because of that, therefore, just like Misa, just like death penalty requires a basin of 23, so too Malchus is going to require a basin of 23. If that's the case, we're going to see that when you administer Malchus, interestingly enough, Beis Din, they have like a court physician. And the court physician would assess how many Malchus could this guy take. How many malchus could this guy take? Right? So if that's the case, the Gemara says, why do an umdina? Just flog him. Right? Flog him, whatever it is, 39 malchus. And if he dies, he dies. V'imos, limos. What's the big deal? What's the big deal? In other words, if malchus is instead of misa, just flog him, give him the lashes. If he dies, he dies. That's his problem. Amar le, amar kra, v'nikla achicha le'inecha, ki machis agaba, because both sides, the Torah phrases the obligation to flog someone as flogging a living person. If the person dies in the midst of the flogging, then you're no longer flogging a living person, you're flogging a corpse. That's not Malchus. That's not Malchus. So listen to this. Let's say Beis Din. So Ruvain went ahead and he planted kilayim, planted the forbidden mixture. So we're going to flog him. So now what happens? So Beis Din, the court physician said, you know what? This guy Ruvain, he could only withstand 20 lashes. That's all he could do. That's all he could take 20 lashes. So we'll say, what's the halacha? In makin also ela makos haris l'shtalish. Now, when we give malchus, we'll say we're going to see that halacha l'maisa, you only give the number of malchus divisible by 3. And the reason for that is the way they would do malchus is 2/3 on the back, 1/3 on the front. So every number of malchus always had to be divisible by 3. So which means if you were given 20, right, they would knock that down to 18. 18, Amud Beis. The Gemara says, Limchie esrim v'chada, v'chimayis b'hach chada lemos. I don't care, who cares? So give him 20, and you know what? If he dies, he dies. If he dies, he dies. So the Gemara says, V'ha kimachis agaba dechayis kamachis. So now again, remember, we're not concerned he's going to die during the flogging. What are we concerned about? He'll die after the flogging. Okay? So as long as he's alive during the flogging, that's fine. Now we're flogging a living person. If he dies afterwards, it's his problem. In other words, we'll say, if you understand, like Rava said, that Malchus is in place of Misa, so why are we so concerned if he dies as a result of the flogging? I don't understand. To which the Gemara says incredible. Amar Kra, because the pasuk says, "V'nikla achicha le'inecha." The pasuk says, your brother again, should get malchus in front of your eyes. Achar shelaka achicha ba'ina v'leka. It has to be that after he gets flogged, he's still your brother. Meaning what? That he has to be alive. He has to be alive. Which I will say, by the way, is such a profound Gemara in general also. V'nikla achicha le'einecha, which also means that after he gets flogged, he's your brother. Meaning what I will say, after Ruvain received his punishment, he's your brother. I will say, the Torah is teaching us a profound and incredible lesson. People make mistakes. But after people make mistakes, if they apologize and they accept their punishment and they accept the repercussions, you need to forgive them. Right? So often in life, people wrong us, right? And what happens? They apologize, but we're so upset. We're so angry, right? And even though, again, they've done whatever they can to right the situation, we're still filled with so much animosity. You can't do that. At a certain point, you have to accept the forgiveness and re-accept the person as your brother. It's what we want from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it's what we need to be able to give to each other. Once the process has taken place, once again he becomes Achicha. Absolutely incredible. Ibra Chodesh B'Shlosha. Okay, we'll say. Let's go, we got this. Right, Ibra Chodesh B'Shlosha. Right, so remember again, the intercalation of the new month is done with a Beis Din of 3. Now what does this mean? Jewish calendar 101. A month has either 29 days or 30 days. Becomes day 31 one way or another. That day 31 is always day 1 of the next month. That's it. So Gemara says, Chishuv lo katani, Kiddush lo katani, Eli Ibor. Now listen, interestingly enough, there's really 3 processes in this. There's Chishuv. Chishuv means when a Beis Din or a group of people sit down, should we go ahead and make the current month a complete month? Should we add an extra day? We'll say, by the way, can you imagine that's such a beautiful conversation? You probably open up like a good bottle of Eretz Yisrael wine. You sit down together. Chevra, what do you think? Right? What do you think? Right? Do we need a complete month? Not a complete month. So Lamaisa, Chishuv lo katani, Kiddush lo katani, Ele Ibor. So Halacha Lamaisa again, there's no mention of Chish. So it's not Chishuv, it's not Kiddush. Kiddush is the actual sanctification, Ele Ibor. Rather, I will say it sounds like what it's talking about is when they make the declaration that it is a complete month. That's what requires a Beis Din of 3. The Gemara says, Lo lekatchu meila laber. But I have a better idea. You don't have to do anything. So remember, if Beis Din does nothing, then by definition, the next month, the current month, will become full, and day 31 will be Rosh Chodesh. Abaye Tani Kiddush HaChodesh. Abaye says, no. Say that the Mishnah is actually referring to Kiddush HaChodesh. The Mishnah is actually referring to the concept, ultimately, of going ahead and being Mekadesh, actually making the declaration that the new month has arrived. That requires a Beis Din of 3. Taina Mehalchi Brisa supports this. Kiddush HaChodesh v'Ibra Shana b'Shlosha div Rabbi Meir. Both Kiddush HaChodesh, which is the sanctification of the new month, and Ibra Shana, which is making it into a leap year, require a Beis Din of 3 div Rabbi Meir. Amar Rava, v'ha Ibor Katani. But it says Ibor. Ela Amar Rava Kiddush biyom Ibor b'Shlosha. Kiddush biyom Ibor b'Shlosha. Achar Ibor leka Kiddush. So Rava says like this: if you're sanctifying the new month on the day of the Ibor, which is the 30th day, then Allah L'maisa require a Beis Din. After the 30th day, i.e. on day 31, there is no Kiddush that is necessary because it occurs de facto. Umani Rabbi Lazar ben Tzadok Yidisanya, Rabbi Lazar ben Tzadok Omer, Imlo Nira Bizmano, In Mekachinoso. If the moon was not seen in its appropriate time or its normal time, then ultimately we're not Mekadesh the Chodesh, Shekvar Kidshua B'Shamayim, because at the end of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu already decreed about how the month is going to fall out. Rav Nachman Amar Kiddush Achar Iber B'Shlosha, B'Yom Iber Leka Kiddush. Rav Nachman says that ultimately, again, Kiddush that occurs on the 31st day is done with a Beis Din of 3, but ultimately on the 30th day itself, there's no need for any type of formal Kiddush. And whose opinion is this? Umani, Plimuhu. Tisanya Plimo Omer. Plimo says, Bismano in Mekachin also. In its time, there is no need for any formal Kiddush process. Shalo Bismano Mekachin also. Not in its time we have to go ahead and do Kiddush HaChodesh. Rav Ashi Amar, I'm sorry, no, we're going quickly. Rav Ashi Amar, Li'olim Chishuv Katani. No, the Mishnah is talking about Chishuv. When it says you need a Beis Din of 3. Beis Din of 3 for what? Beis Din of 3 to sit down to decide, should this be a month of 30 days or not? Umay Ibor, what does it mean when it says Ibor? Chishuv de Ibor. The Beis Din of 3 is necessary to deliberate this matter. V'aydi de kabay lemisna Ibor shana tani nami Ibor chodesh. And since he's lashon of Ibor shana, it also uses lashon of Ibor chodesh. The Chishuv chodesh in Kiddush Chodesh Lo. And it's only ultimately what? It's only Halacha L'Maisa, the contemplation about what the new month should be. That requires a Beis Din of 3, but Kiddush does not. Whose opinion is that? That's Rabbi Eliezer. He decided Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Bein Bismano, Bein Shalo Bismano, in Mekachino. So you don't need a formal Kiddush on day 30 or day 31. Shneimar, the Kiddashtem es Shnasa Chamishim, Shnasa Chamishim Shana. Shanim Ata Mekadesh, V'ata Mekadesh Chadashim. Beis Din needs to formally sanctify the year, right? Years need to require formal Kiddush Beis Din, but ultimately, again, months do not. So therefore, it turns out that when the Mishnah said that you need a Beis Din of 3 for the Chodesh, what it means is you need a Beis Din of 3 for deliberation about whether or not the current month should have 30 or 31 days. Rabosai, Shkoyach. Yeah. Sunday. All right, Chavrazim, have a great day, everyone. A good Shabbos, a lichtig Chanukah. Jack, have a great day. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. Amen.